Azure made NAT gateways a lot easier to use. The standard V2 NAT gateway is faster, more reliable, and now works across availability zones without extra setup or added costs. Hello everyone, I'm Travis and welcome to Seraltos. You might think you don't need an Azure NAT gateway, but chances are you eventually will. Microsoft is phasing out default outbound access, and a NAT gateway is one of the most cost-effective ways to give your resources internet access. In this video, we're taking a look at why the standard V2 NAT gateway is worth your attention and why you'll want to use it. Before we get into it, please like, subscribe, and share. It really helps this channel grow and is greatly appreciated. Check out my courses at udemy.com to learn even more. Links are below. And a big thanks to my channel members for your support. All right, back to it. Microsoft announced the removal of default outbound access for new virtual networks last year, and the deadline has been moved to March of 2026. Will it really happen? I'm sure it will, eventually. Even if they push it out again, there are still plenty of good reasons to use a NAT gateway. A NAT gateway lets multiple virtual machines across subnets get access to the internet. The client uses a static IP address that we control, whether that's a single address or a whole range. It centralizes outbound connectivity and gives every VM a consistent egress path. Using a NAT gateway can also save you money because all the VMs on a subnet share the same public IP. Plus, you get some protection because clients don't get their own public IP, and the NAT gateway doesn't accept inbound connections. If you're not using something like a load balancer, firewall, or per machine public IP, then a NAT gateway is usually the best option for internet access. So what's the big deal with the standard V2 NAT gateway? The previous version wasn't zone redundant. You had to pin it to a single zone at deployment, which meant that if you wanted a zone redundant setup, you might have to deploy one NAT gateway per availability zone. That all changes with the standard V2 NAT gateway. It keeps the same functionality as the previous version, but is now fully zone redundant. That means simpler design and lower cost. And the best part is there's no price difference between standard and standard V2. There are a few more benefits too. V2 supports IPv6, it increases throughput up to 100 gigabits per second, and it supports full logs for a small additional charge. But there are some trade-offs. The V2 NAT gateway must use a standard public IP address. There's no in-place upgrade path from the original standard NAT gateway to the V2. It's also not available in all regions yet, and not every delegated subnet is supported. A quick heads up, be careful if you attach a standard V2 NAT gateway to subnets that also have an outbound load balancer, firewall, or VM with assigned public IP addresses. If you do, new connections will use the V2 NAT gateway. That even applies to IPv6 subnets using outbound load balancers. Coming up, we'll look at the right and wrong ways to create a standard V2 NAT gateway. Then we'll walk through how to use it with both new and existing virtual networks, plus how to upgrade your current setup to the V2 NAT gateway. Let's jump into the Azure portal to get started. Here we are in the Azure portal. Let's start with how not to create a V2 NAT gateway. And we'll do that by creating a new VNet. We'll go to Create Resource, search for Virtual Network, and we'll create a virtual network. From here, we'd set the subscription, resource group, add a virtual network name, and select the region. Let's jump ahead to IP addresses. I'm not going to finish this, so it's okay that it doesn't have a name. If we create a new subnet or modify an existing one, we have the option to create a NAT gateway under Security. Currently, this creates a V1 NAT gateway. It's not bound to any availability zones, and there's no option to change that. So if we want to use a V2 NAT gateway, we'll need to create that first. Let's do that now. We can close out of here and go back to Create Resource. From Create a Resource, we'll search for NAT Gateway. Go to NAT Gateway and then under Create, select NAT Gateway. That takes us to the Create a NAT Gateway page. Set the subscription and resource group or create a new resource group if you need to. Give it a name and select the region. We have two options under SKU. If we leave it set to standard, we can select our availability zone or choose none and let Microsoft place it in a zone. Or we could select Standard V2. If you don't see Standard V2, it's likely the region you selected doesn't support the Standard V2 NAT Gateway. Selecting Standard V2 removes the zone options. That's because it's zone redundant by default. We'll leave the idle timeout set to 4 and go next to outbound IP. We can add a single IP address or a prefix of IP addresses. A single public IP address can handle just over 64,000 source NAT or SNAT ports. A prefix will give us more than one public IP address. It will give us a block of continuous IP addresses. Use this if you have a lot of resources behind the NAT gateway and may run out of source NAT ports. The V2 NAT gateway will scale up to 16 public IPs. Let's cancel that and go to single IP. The dropdown shows a list of IPs that can and cannot be associated to the NAT gateway. The public IP has to be a standard V2 SKU. So if you have some standard public IPs, they won't work. This example will use a new public IP. If we select new from the list, we can't modify the name. Let's close the list. If we select create a public IP address, we get more options. We can give it a name. The rest can be left as is and click OK. Then save. Next, we'll go to networking. We can select an existing virtual network and subnet to attach to the new V2 gateway when it's created. Notice the one on the screen has some subnets that can't be associated because it's associated with another gateway. A subnet can only use one NAT gateway. Select a subnet and virtual network if needed. For this example, we won't select a virtual network. Coming up, we'll migrate an existing virtual network from a standard NAT gateway to a V2 gateway. Go next to tags, add tags as needed, and then go to review and create. And once validation passes, click create. The video will pause here until it's finished. The deployment finished and it didn't take long. Let's go to the resource. It gives us a warning at the top that it won't work until we associate the gateway with a subnet. We'll do that shortly. Also notice it shows the location it's deployed to. That includes the zones. And it also shows the SKU, which is standard V2. If we go to outbound IP under settings, that shows the public IP address used by the gateway. We can click on the name, and that takes us to the public IP address object. Notice its SKU is standard V2. Let's go back to the gateway. From the gateway, if we go to networking under settings, we can also select an existing virtual network and a subnet. So we can associate an existing subnet from the gateway after it's created. That is how to create a new standard V2 NAT gateway. Previously, we saw how we can add a subnet to a NAT gateway when that NAT gateway is created. Next, let's add a gateway to a subnet when a virtual network is created. Let's see how that's done by creating a new virtual network. Go to Create Resources and search for a virtual network. Create a virtual network. Set the subscription and resource group, then give it a name and select the region. This example won't actually create a new virtual network, so from here I'll go straight to IP addresses. Let's edit the default subnet. First, since we're using a NAT gateway, we can select private subnet. That simply disables default outbound access. As stated on the page, that will be the default setting after March of 2026. Earlier, we saw how we could create a new NAT gateway with the virtual network, but that created a standard NAT gateway, not a standard V2 NAT gateway. This time we'll select the existing V2 we just created. We'll click Save. And we could repeat those steps with any new subnet. Finish the deployment if you are creating a new virtual network. This example won't finish the deployment. Next, what if we have a standard NAT gateway attached to a subnet and need to upgrade to a V2? Unfortunately, there's no direct upgrade path from a standard to a standard V2. The upgrade process is going to create some disruption, but it's pretty fast and easy. Let's go to an existing virtual network. From the virtual network, go to subnets, select a subnet, and from here we simply change the NAT gateway from the old to the new. That's the V2 we created previously. You could also set it to a private subnet if that's not set already. However, I learned the hard way a long time ago not to do multiple changes at once in production environments. This isn't production, so I'll enable the private subnet. Once finished, click Save. Obviously, you'll need to schedule for some potential downtime in production environments while the old gateway is removed and the new one is added. Also, keep in mind that this will change the public IP for any devices on that subnet. So update any firewall rules or other services that may be dependent on the public IP. Some organizations may have created 3 standard NAT gateways, one for each zone, and then attach them to subnets with zonal devices in each. That shouldn't be needed now that the V2 gateway is zone redundant. That is how to create a standard V2 NAT gateway and update the virtual networks to use that new gateway. And that's how you create, attach, and upgrade a standard V2 NAT gateway. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.